Good evening. I'm going to call the September meeting of the Washington County Quorum Court to order. I appreciate everybody being here this evening. With that, Justice Dennis has agreed to do us the honor of prayer and pledge. Justice Dennis, will you cue up your mic? Cue your mic.
May we pray. Lord, we know you say to love your neighbor. And love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails, but where there are prophecies, they will cease. Where there are tongues, they will be stilled. Where there is knowledge, it will pass away. And now these three remain, faith, hope, and love, but the greatest of these is love. And Lord, help us to love and have respect for each other. Also keep our employees at Washington County safe, and pray that you just help us all to make wise decisions tonight. These things we ask and pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. We will pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for that, Justice Dennis. The next item on our agenda is the adoption of the agenda. Does anybody have any changes or amendments to the agenda? Justice Lyons?
I make a motion we adopt the agenda.
I have a motion to adopt the agenda by Justice Lyons, a second by Justice Dean. All in favor? Aye. Those opposed? The agenda has been adopted. Item number 4, are there any preliminary motions this evening? Justice Dean?
Thank you, Judge. I'd like to make a motion that all ordinances and resolutions are read by title only.
I have a motion to read all ordinances and resolutions by title only by Justice Dean. I believe I heard second by Justice Simons. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? That motion carries. Next up, we have a citizens' comment period. County Ordinance 2016-66 sets a total of 15 minutes for public comments with a limit to 3 minutes per person. Are there any public comments this evening? Come forward. Please state your name and where you're from. I'll need your help first. There should be a little person icon. There you go. Thank you, sir.
That person's kind of worn out. Mac Mayfield, 980 Rocky Lane, rural Fayetteville. I'd like to share with y'all and with you, Judge, the editorial that was in yesterday's paper, starting with some excerpts from that. It's entitled, Secrecy Showdown, County Sparring with JP May Continue. We don't know who will eventually prevail in the Freedom of Information Act lawsuits by Beth Koger against Washington County. Koger, who became an elected Justice of the Peace on the Quorum Court in January, is precisely the kind of citizen turned FOIA activist that drives people in charge a little batty. Why? Because she's familiar with the Freedom of Information Act and has the audacity to expect government officials to follow it. That's not to say whatever Ms. Koger says is the gospel on FOIA. However, at least in 2 instances, the courts have the final say on that question. In round 1, though, Koger prevailed. Koger sued Washington County officials last year when she discovered a county panel known as JSEP had been meeting for months unbeknownst to her, despite her efforts to track and attend most, if not all, county meetings. JSAP is one of those government abbreviations, this one meaning Jobs, Evaluation, Salary, Administrative Program. It makes recommendations to the Quorum Court regarding pay for county positions. In December, a circuit judge ruled JSEP committee is a public body, required to hold its meetings in public, finding against Washington County's position that the committee could conduct its work privately. In March, Coger filed another FOIA lawsuit against the county and its current county judge, Patrick Deakins. This one involved a further meeting of the JSEP panel, of which Coger said she'd not been notified despite requesting it, and the county's Criminal Justice Coordinating Board. The latter is a critically important board that's examining ways the court systems and county jail can operate more efficiently. The jail has had overcrowding issues for years. Coger alleged the Criminal Justice Panel had also met without adequate notification to the public and without any recording of the proceedings as required by law. A circuit judge held a bench trial in June. The judge found the Criminal Justice Board's business is manifestly a matter of public concern for the citizens of Washington County and qualifies as a public entity supported by public funds. That's covered by the Arkansas Freedom of Information Act. The courts in both cases determined Washington County officials fell short of the law in their attempt to justify the secretive conduct of public meetings. In the first case, the judge awarded Coger $1,042.
Thank you, Mr. Mayfield.
Yes,
Your
thank
time
you.
has expired. Are there any additional public comments this evening?
Hi, y'all. My name is Gracie Foreman. I live in Fayetteville, Arkansas, right off Chestnut Avenue down by Leverett. And I'm just going to read a little bit more from this article, and then I'm going to ask y'all some rhetorical questions. So, in the first case, the judge awarded Coger $1,042 in costs associated with the lawsuit. And the second, the county was ordered to pay $5,445 in attorney's fees and costs to Coger. Deacon's office had asked the Quorum Court to allocate $20,000 in extra funding to County Attorney Brian Lester's 2023 budget so the county can appeal Coger's victories. And then a little bit on down further, it says, maybe the county fights based on principle. It certainly is questionable from a fiscal standpoint. Potentially spend $20,000 to potentially avoid paying Coger's $6,487 in fees and costs. And so my questions for you tonight are, is it fiscally responsible to spend $20,000 on an appeal for costs of $6,500? Is it fiscally efficient for this county and the community of this county to spend $20,000 on something that only costs $6,500? And then I also want to ask you, who does it benefit in the community of this county to allocate that $20,000 to appeal those decisions? Because for me, as a resident of Washington County, I firmly believe in FOIA laws, and I firmly believe in my right and other people's rights to FOIA elected officials and to FOIA the county as deemed necessary, no matter what. I truly believe in the FOIA laws, and I truly believe that we have a right to this information at all times to know what is going on in our county. And then I further just want to touch on really, really briefly that the CJCC is a perfect example of this. The CJCC has a meeting this Friday that I won't be able to attend because I had already made plans, but if I had known about it before this week, I would have altered those plans to be at that meeting. But because it was not posted on the county calendar until this week, and because it was not even really brought to light until around Tuesday or Wednesday of this week, I won't be able to attend that as a resident of Washington County. I think that's my right to be in these public meetings, and I think it is my right to know what elected officials are doing in my county. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional public comments?
My name's Bobby Huffines. I live at 20039 Santa Rosa Drive in Springdale, Arkansas. I guess some of my questions were answered by the previous comments, but I noticed that we had an ordinance here to advance an increase in the budget for the county attorney, and in some of the comments that I read on it, it said there were various lawsuits. And I know the FOIA one has been going on, but I hadn't heard about any of the others. And I was wondering, is there a list of lawsuits that the county is up against that we're needing the extra money for? You know, it seemed like it was just a month or so ago, we increased it 10,000. Now we're coming along and increasing it another 20, that's 30,000. Is the lady right? Is all this going to the FOIA deal, or is there a lot of kind of problems out there that we're not aware of lawsuit-wise? That's my question. And I'm kind of like her. I was thinking that in what I saw on the FOIA deal, that we ought to settle the thing instead of spending a whole bunch more money trying to prove a point. It looks to me like it's even Mr. Lester made a comment in one of the court proceedings that, yes, it should have been an open meeting. So I don't quite understand, and maybe y'all do, and if you do, and that's fine, maybe somebody can explain it to me. I just thought before you voted tonight, you ought to think back. We've got the attorney saying it should have been an open meeting. The judges have ruled it should have been an open meeting, and yet we're still proceeding with the fight on that one now. I don't know about these other lawsuits. That's my question. I'll leave it with you.
Thank you. Additional public comments?
Good evening. My name is Billy Cook. I live at 1151 East Shepherd Lane in Fayetteville, and I am a Washington County taxpayer. I just want to say that J.P. Koger represented herself in her first lawsuit in a trial that lasted 2 days. She's not an attorney, but she went up against the county's highly paid attorney, and despite that huge disadvantage, she won. A circuit judge was convinced after reviewing documents, testimony, and evidence that the county had violated the open meetings law of FOIA, and that 2 county employees had failed to answer her request for public records. I understand that one of the defendants in this case, Mr. Reynolds, testified under oath during that trial that he prepared his and the other defendants' responses 2 times and took them to the receptionist's desk on the 5th floor to be delivered to the county attorney as he was their supervisor. But they were never given to J.P. Koger until after she had filed her lawsuit. That resulted in a judgment of $1,042 in January and another judgment that was filed this week in the amount of $1,325. 2 times the judge ruled against the county in the same case. There are consequences when individuals break the law, and there must be consequences when our government breaks the law. Washington County is now facing the consequences of those actions. The county should accept responsibility and implement policies and procedures going forward so that this does not happen again, rather than throw more taxpayer funds into covering up already declared guilt. Thank you.
Public comments? With that, we'll move on into our agenda. Item number 6 is approval of the minutes. Are there any corrections to the minutes that need to be noted? If not, we'll consider them accepted. Seeing none, we'll move forward. Next up is the judge's report. First off, I want to start off by saying thank you to the Washington County Extension Office, and particularly to their Master Gardeners Club this evening for the refreshments and snacks before the meeting. That's always a great gesture of hospitality. I know the justices appreciate it, and I certainly appreciate it. It always makes us feel better on an evening like this to have a little bit of a snack. The disposal report for this month is in your packet, and if you have any questions about that, I prompt you to ask those officials. The next item on my list is I want to review some updates on the Washington County Jail Quarantine Edition. This week we received RFQs for that project. We received 4 responses to that RFQ. I'm extremely optimistic about that response rate. We received RFQs from Nabholz, Baldwin Shell, Flintco, and Chris Woods Construction Company. I've been personally very optimistic to bring this project home. And it's my belief that with local participation and more participation in that project, we're going to see competition. And when we have competition, that is translated into the fee, and I believe the taxpayers win, and so I'm extremely excited to have that back. I'm convinced now by seeing the local participation that we have that project on the right track. We are very dedicated to it. My staff is putting our full weight behind that project, and I would also like to say that Sheriff Cantrell, of course, is very excited about that project, and so we have set some internal deadlines, which are very optimistic, but I think when we set very optimistic goals, we get the participation that we need. We would like to have a construction manager selected by the end of October. We will then send out the bid packages for rebidding. I would also like to have dirt moved by the first of the year. And so we are working with these partners who have submitted the RFQs to understand their qualifications so that we can pick the best one. I will say that they've been extremely helpful in answering any of our questions so far, and we look forward to meeting and hearing more from each one of those. I want to also touch on something and make a huge clarification. My office made the very difficult decision to separate ourselves from our construction manager in that project, which was Smith Doyle. They have a sister company, which was Spirit Architects, which has delivered the plans for that project and has been involved with it. We still have an intact contract with that organization, and I look forward to fulfilling that contract with them. As we bring on a new construction manager, inevitably there needs to be a relationship between those two companies so that our construction managers can have clarifications and insight onto what the plans say and to mitigate any challenges that we're going to see in construction. While we've had to make difficult decisions, I invite a good relationship with Spirit Architecture, and I'm committed to that. And so I very much feel like the ball's in their court, and we'll see how that progresses moving forward. The Emergency Operations Center update, I want to do something very quick there. WER Architects, I know I come here every month, and almost every meeting I say it's coming soon. They are supposed to have some renderings done for us very soon, and they're going to hand those off to our construction management agent there, C.R. Crawford, who will then start putting together construction budgets and numbers. So we're very hopeful, maybe as soon as next month, that we'll have something concrete for you guys to visually see on that project, and also something concrete in terms of numbers. And so I want to thank our architects and our construction manager in that project. I think they've done a very good job of making this a high priority. And I think this project is progressing as fast as it can at this point. It's a very complex project with a lot of intricacies, and I know you guys understand that more than a lot of people, but I feel very good about where that project's progressing. Just a housekeeping thing that I just really want to address. On September 6th, we had a demonstration here at the courthouse. Not really sure what the demonstration was about. All I want to say is we very much welcome the public to come to this building. This is your building, and we always support freedom of speech and First Amendment rights. The detraction was that this group left a bunch of trash on our property, and all I want to say is while that is a very poor reflection on them and whatever issue they want to take up, I also want the public to know that that's a hardship on our Buildings and Grounds team and the people who take so much pride in keeping this building looking good and accessible and enjoyable to the public. So I would ask everybody's help. Please come to the courthouse. Please let your voices be heard. Please clean up after yourselves and be respectful of the people's building. And with that, that's the end of my judge's report, and we'll move into the business. Our first item on unfinished business. Counselor, will you please read that by title only?
An ordinance authorizing the transfer of one vehicle to Madison County, Arkansas.
Justice Dennis, would you like to introduce this, sir?
Yes, this is where the coroner was going to move a car over to Madison County, give it to them. And so I'd like to move it to a third and final reading.
I have a motion to suspend the rules and move this item to a third and final reading by Justice Dennis. I believe I heard second by Justice Dean. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries. Counselor Lister, will you read this for a third and final time?
An ordinance authorizing the transfer of one vehicle to Madison County, Arkansas.
Justice Dennis?
I move we accept this motion.
I have a motion to pass by Justice Dennis. I heard follow-up by second by Justice Dean. I would just like to say very quickly, this was my fault. last month. I did not take up 3 readings on this item and the subsequent item, and I've delayed this 30 days. I apologize to the group. I try to do better about that, about chairing meetings, but I appreciate the good vote. Is there any further discussion on this item? Questions? Ms. Mason, will you please call the roll? Oh, I'm sorry. We need to have public comments on this item. Are there any public comments on this item? With that, Ms. Mason, will you please call the roll?
Robert Dennis.
Yes.
Suki Hires. Evelyn Rios Stafford. Gary Ricker. Butch Pond. David Wilson. Sean Simons. Kyle Lyons. Lisa Ecke. Charles Dean. Chandra Washington. Beth Koger.
That item passes. Item number 9. Counselor, will you read this ordinance by title only?
An ordinance amending Section 5 of the Benefits and Approved Leave section of Ordinance 2018-50, the Washington County Employee Handbook.
Thank you, sir. Justice Lyons, would you like to introduce this?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion, we suspend the rules and move this to the third reading.
I have a motion to suspend the rules to move to the third and final reading by Justice Lyons, second by Justice Dean. All those in favor? Those opposed? This will move to the third and final reading. Counselor, will you read that?
An ordinance amending Section 5 of the Benefits and Approved Leave section of Ordinance 2018-50, which is the Washington County Employee Handbook.
Justice Lyons?
Thank you, Judge. As we discussed, this is the modification that is in huge favor of our staff. It gives them the ability to participate in this program earlier than what the current policy provides them, as well as reduces the amount that must be left in their vacation totals after they do the donation. I think this is good for our staff, especially those that get into a situation where they're trying to support their family that has had an emergency event and still be able to support the county in their job. And with that, I make a motion that we approve this.
I have a motion to approve by Justice Lyons, second by Justice Dean. Is there any further discussion or questions on the item? Any public comments? Ms. Mason, will you please call the roll?
Robert Dennis. Suki Hires. Evelyn Rios Stafford. Gary Ricker. Butch Pond. David Wilson. Sean Simons. Kyle Lyons. Lisa Ecke. Charles Dean. Chandra Washington. Beth Koger.
That item passes. Item number 10 is our consent agenda. Counselor, will you read each of these items by title only?
Item 1 on the consent agenda is an ordinance recognizing additional revenue in the amount of $178,208.88 and appropriating $178,208.88 from unappropriated reserves in the general fund and the jail fund to various line items in the sheriff, jail, and jail and maintenance budgets for 2023. Item 2 is an ordinance anticipating additional revenue in the amount of $13,506 in the law enforcement grant fund and appropriating $13,506 from the law enforcement grant fund to the JAG grant budget for 2023. Item 3 is an ordinance recognizing $37.09 in unspent grant funds in the 3510 JDC grant fund and appropriating $37.09 from the 3510 JDC grant fund to the JDC grant fund budget for 2023. Item 4 is an ordinance recognizing additional revenue of $31,167 in the JDC grant fund and appropriating $31,167 from the JDC grant fund to the Juvenile Detention Center Grant in Aid 2023-2024 budget for 2023. Item 5 is an ordinance anticipating additional revenue in the amount of $200,000 in the Wheeler Road Bridge Grant Fund and appropriating the amount of $200,000 from the Wheeler Road Grant or Bridge Grant Fund budget for 2023. Item 6 is an ordinance amending the prosecuting attorney's budget for 2023. Item 7 is an ordinance amending the grants department budget and the county judge's budget for 2023.
Justice Lyons?
Make a motion, we pass the consent agenda.
I have a motion to pass the consent agenda by Justice Lyons, a second by Justice Simons. Any discussion by the court? Justice Rios Stafford?
Thank you, Judge. On item 10.5, the Wheeler Road Bridge Project, last week when this came up in the Budget Committee, I had asked if anyone could provide us, or just the to fill in the public, just on some basic details on what the Wheeler Road Bridge Project is. I know you were not able to be at that meeting last week, and so I was wondering if you or someone from your administration could just share some brief details of what the project is.
Yeah, I can do that quickly if you'd like. If you remember, several months ago, the body approved 2 projects to submit to the Regional Planning Commission for their surface transportation block grant, grants that they're basically subrecipients for, and then they award out. Of those 2 projects, this was one that received funding. And so this initial $200,000 is basically for the engineering and the planning for that bridge. I don't know if you're familiar with it. This is out on Wheeler Road, just after Humont Village. I don't know if you're familiar with that area out there. It lies 800 feet outside of Fayetteville city limits. And so one of the reasons that I believe we submitted this and that the Regional Planning Commission saw fit to fund it is that this is a major growth area for the county. I am very aggressive and want our team to be very aggressive about bringing grant funds back here to Washington County. A bridge like this, a replacement project like this, would not be something that we could undertake as a county by ourselves. We have to have participation in funds from outside sources, and so this is a very preliminary project. I will also say this is federal funding, and what we've heard and what we've been warned about, this is a very slow process. This will be a very long-term project that will take place over many years. But once again, you know, to me, it's kind of the analogy, when's the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago or today? And so that's why we're entering in this agreement. This is something that we foresee as being a huge benefit to Washington County. And I don't know if I addressed all your questions there.
You did. Thank
This
you.
by no means is the cost of the project.
Yeah.
This is just the engineering and planning. This will be a multi-million-dollar bridge project to bring to Washington County. And so you will be able to monitor this and appropriate additional funds over these several years.
Thank you.
Anything else? Are there any public comments on our consent agenda this evening? Ms. Mason, will you please call the roll?
Robert Dennis. Yes. Suki Hires. Yes. Evelyn Rios Stafford. Yes. Gary Ricker. Yes, ma'am. Butch Pond. Yes. David Wilson. Yes. Sean Simons. Yes, ma'am. Kyle Lyons. Yes, ma'am. Lisa Ecke. Yes. Charles Dean.
Yes, ma'am.
Chandra Washington.
Yes.
Beth Koger.
Yes.
Item passes unanimously. With that, we'll move to item number 11. This item is on its first reading. Council, will you read this item by title only?
An ordinance amending the county attorney budget for 2023.
Justice Pond, would you like to introduce this ordinance? Just a second, Justice Pond. I'm showing that you're active. I don't know what the. Are you plugged in? There you go. There you go.
All right. This ordinance is to increase the county attorney budget for, we've had several seemed like lawsuits come up, FOI lawsuits, and seemed to be a couple of these that the county attorney, whom we've all seen fit to ask for opinions on different things, felt the need for these to go on to appeals. And the thing about it is, I just kind of think about this as, the mechanics of it. I kind of think about, well, if I saw fit for some reason to sue the county, well, I think what I'd be doing, because I'm a taxpayer in Washington County and I'm a taxpayer in the state of Arkansas, and I'm also a JP on the court, I'd be suing myself. A small part of that I'd actually be suing myself, and probably not going to happen because I don't like the idea of being sued, and I'm certainly not going to sue myself. There's been some comments made, and I think there's maybe some of it in the newspaper, about some kind of cover-up here. We've got people that are opposed to having it go to an appeal. If we had some kind of cover-up going, I can't see how we'd be wanting to appeal to a higher court. Looked to me like more people would find out more about it. Maybe I'm more interested in knowing more about it. If I had sued and cost the county a certain amount of money, and somebody was going to appeal the case that I'd already won, and I knew I was right, looked like I'd be right again. I'd be twice right. So I don't understand some of these comments. I don't understand how all of a sudden, now that there's discussion of an appeal, people who were for the lawsuit to start with now have decided, well, that's a waste of tax money, when I would have thought it was a waste of tax money to start with. You can kind of see I'm not necessarily for lawsuits, but once you get in one, you've got to rely on the attorneys to take it over, the lawyers, and if they're not through with it, in a couple of cases here out of I don't know how many, a handful, looks to me like it might be a good idea to waste a little more tax money, just to kind of see where we are on this. And I might be saying waste in a facetious way, pardon me. But I'd move to suspend the rules and put this on the second reading.
As an appropriation ordinance, this will be a motion to pass, and we'll see if it gets 10 votes tonight, it will pass. If not, it'll automatically move to the second reading.
Move to pass.
Move to pass by Justice Pond, second by Justice Lyons. Any further discussion on the item? Justice Hires?
Thank you, Judge. My understanding, based on the public comments and what I've been hearing from the community, is that nobody's concerned about a cover-up. I think that what the public is concerned about, what I'm concerned about, my only concern, is I think it's a waste of taxpayer dollars to spend another $20,000 to appeal something that another branch of government has already found a judgment in. And that's really where my whole thing lays, is that spending another $20,000 to appeal something that's already been found in a court of law seems like bad economics to me. I know that with my family, if we had a budget and we had a choice of paying $6,000 something today or $20,000 in the hopes that maybe we wouldn't have to pay the $6,000, I know what my family would choose. And so there's no way I can support this. I think it's one of the most fiscally irresponsible things that I've seen, and that's saying a lot. Thank you.
Justice Dennis?
Thank you, Judge. I'm interested in reading the article in Northwest Arkansas Democrat Gazette. I wonder if it was the opinion section. So it was someone's opinion about all this, not some facts, not someone that was sworn under oath to tell the truth, but could tell what they wanted to tell to influence anybody they wanted to influence. The thing I'll say about this specific needing or getting the money is I don't have the finances deal open, but we had a tremendous increase in insurance this year, tremendous increase, and we're going to have more increases. If you don't fight, then the insurance companies are going to look at it. Now, this is my opinion. The insurance companies are going to raise the rate because you don't even fight for yourself, and if you're found guilty, then they're going to raise the rates. So I'm sure if there's any money left over, it'll be spent on the next lawsuit that we have. It seems like that's the way the county folks are going to go, and so we've got to be buttoned up and have the money to pay for it. So we're going to have to set aside some legal money to fight lawsuits, and I think what Butch Pond said was, J.P. Pond, if I may quote him, was silly to have a lawsuit in the beginning. And I've been on court a long time, and I know I have a lot of respect for attorney Steve Zaga, but Steve Zaga used to be our attorney as well. And people sitting in the chairs right next to me hated him as well and gave him a hard time. And then now he turned around and was a lawyer representing a lawsuit against the very thing that he had done. And so, yeah, there's hypocrisy as we go through life. But you better be buttoned up and ready to hire an attorney when you need an attorney. We make all the jokes about them and all the bad remarks about them, but then when we need one, boy, they're the best guy that you can find. So go out and do something and need an attorney and see how quickly you'll come up with the money to pay for it. So anyway, that's our responsibility. So I think we need to set aside the money for it, and I'll be voting for it. Thank you.
Justice Lyons?
Thank you, Judge. If this was just a simple financial decision based on the numbers on the table and there were not possible long-term costs, it would be an easy decision. The problem is it's not. It's not that simple. It's not that black and white. As I understand, this case will set a precedence if we just let it go. And it will cost the county more money in the long run through additional suits because of the misinterpretation of the laws. And I believe that's where the county, my understanding is that's where the county stands. The laws were misinterpreted by the judge and awarded. And the appeal is to go and set that record straight to be what is the law, what is a FOIA law, what is an open meeting law, and how does that operate, and how does the county operate within that? And because that is really the point of the matter here, and we need to make sure we stand up and defend the county and make sure we can operate and support the citizens of this county appropriately, then I believe we should go for the appeal and can continue down that path, and I will support it.
Justice Rios Stafford?
Thank you, Judge. In my opinion, going forward with these appeals is a prime example of government waste and abuse. We've had two different judges, not just one, come to the same conclusion. And that conclusion was that the county was violating the Freedom of Information Act. And, you know, when we, at the budget meeting last week, you know, we heard that there might be this and that legal strategy here and there. But think about, let's step back from that and look at the big picture. The big picture is, what message are we sending to the citizens of this county? That we're willing to fight to keep government meetings closed from the public? You know, that is not the direction we should be going. We should be, if we're erring on any side, we should be erring on the side of having open meetings. We should be erring on the side of letting the public know what's going on. We should be erring on the side of bringing people in and not shutting them out. We heard that, you know, these appeals are being done to protect the county. The county is made up of the people out there, the people watching at home. Those people are the county. those people aren't being protected by taking this to an appeal. You know, protecting the county doesn't mean protecting the people up on the top floor of this building. We've seen attacks on the freedom of information from Little Rock to right here at home, and we deserve open meetings, and we deserve open government. Hang on. We're here to represent these people. They deserve to know what's going on. This lawsuit is on behalf of all these people out here, the people watching at home, so that they can know what is going on. There's no allegation that anything untoward or bad happened, but people have the right to know what's happening. And so we should not be throwing good money after bad in any way, shape, or form. And I will be voting against this.
Justice Lyons?
Thank you, Judge. I disagree. I don't think this is about not being open and transparent for the citizens to know what's going on. I think this is about the application of the law, the appropriate law, so that the citizens can understand what's going on and the county can make sure they're following it.
Justice Pond?
Yeah, I kind of got the idea, or we're given the appearance that there's someone on this court, any people on this court, who are interested in having secret meetings, doing the public's business behind closed doors, or something or another like that. And I really do not believe that anyone on this court is about that or interested in it any way whatsoever, not in this free country, not in the state of Arkansas, not in this United States. And I've to insinuate any way whatsoever that any of us are looking to do things secretly where the public cannot see it, intentionally or any way otherwise, and to think that we'd have to be taken into some kind of court of law to prevent us from doing such sort of thing is beyond me. I've spent too much a part of my life defending those freedoms that we enjoy, that are God-given rights to be represented fairly and openly and freely. And I take offense, I really do. I take offense of people making speech in here, making it sound like there's anyone on this court that would do anything like that. I apologize for taking offense, actually, but I do. It's just carried it way too far. There's too much dramatics, too much. It's more like a circus. Thank you.
Thank you, Justice Pond. Are there any other comments on the ordinance? Justice Wilson?
Thank you, Judge. I would just like to note that throughout the history of politics, the words waste or irresponsible is always attached to something you're not in favor of. This amount, $20,000, I've only been on this court since January, and we've passed things that are a lot more than $20,000, and nobody called it waste. So it's just relative. And I would urge the voters of this county to understand sometimes there's a good idea to spend a lot of money. Sometimes there's a good idea to spend a little bit of money. Sometimes you reject it, whether it's a big amount or not. So we just want to be wise and judicious in everything we do. But if somebody labels something irresponsible or a waste, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a waste. Thank you.
Thank you, Justice Wilson. Any other comments? You know, I think what I'll say here to close is that Unfortunately, we are a very large and dynamic county. We have also, unfortunately, a lot of legal work that we have to do. I know that this has been, the laser focus on this has been the FOIA lawsuits. And of course, that comes in the context of last week's special session down at the state legislature. I'd also like people to know we have other cases going on, other cases with contractual obligations to have those heard in different settings in different states. And by our nature, we can't even practice in those states, and so we have to hire outside legal representation, unfortunately, for those types of situations. I will echo a little bit of what Justice Pond tried to communicate there, and he did so very eloquently. I don't like some of the rhetoric that's being thrown around. The reality of it is, and I want everyone to appreciate it from my point of view, I take decisions like this and requests to this body like this very seriously. If I could just communicate some of my things that bother me, I 100% support our FOIA law in this state. I think it's a great thing. The issue that we see in these lawsuits is the bottomless pit this will create. We want this defined. We want the judge, we want a court system to define what the limitations and barriers of this are. And if we do not have those, we cannot operate correctly as a county, and we cannot see the end of these lawsuits. I also want to say, as much as we appreciate FOIA in this state, as with anything in life, there can be bad actors, and this can be weaponized, and this can be made a negative thing. As citizens, we're all stewards of the FOIA law. We all own it, we all participate in it. And that's why I feel like this is an extremely important thing to pursue. And I will also say, in many times, we as a Washington County, we are among a short list of counties in this state who are leaders. And we're trailblazers. And a lot of times that comes with a lot of good things attached to it, and sometimes it comes with a lot of extra work and responsibility, and I take that seriously too. There are a lot of eyes statewide that are looking at this situation, making sure we get something that's very defined to come out of this court case, so that we know how to operate underneath FOIA moving forward. With that, I'd like to open it up to public comments. Are there any public comments on this item? If you will, you're going to have to push that button. I believe it's on the right, the button at the bottom on the right. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Oh, that's too loud. Okay. My name is Laura Villegas, and I live at 5005 Bonita Place in Springdale, area code 72762, and I've been a Washington County resident for approximately 23 years. I'm speaking tonight because I am appalled at this court's proposal to spend this money, $20,000 more, on Washington County, of Washington County taxpayers' money, on another appeal to the FOIA suit initiated by J.P. Beth Koger. Twice, a judge has ruled against the county in this same case, and they have explained why. This whole lawsuit, this whole thing could have been avoided if the county had posted the meetings online in the first place and had just provided the public records. This whole mess could have been avoided if the county had just followed the law. And we're talking about the law that we're asking you to follow. Now, instead, you are asking to waste $20,000, and I call it a waste, $20,000 more of the taxpayers' hard-earned money to finance another appeal. And someone mentioned that $20,000 wasn't much in the scheme of things for the county, but believe me, for us individuals out here, your tax-paying citizens, $20,000 is a lot of money. This makes no sense to me, either financially or morally. And as a Washington County taxpayer, I resent such a frivolous misuse of our tax money. I can think of many better ways to use this money small though it might be, including supporting one of the nonprofits COVID relief funds were promised to but never allocated. And I believe, as Justice Rios Stafford said, in FOIA, and I believe this is very important to our maintaining our democracy, because without openness and transparency, I don't know which way the government would go, but it would not be in the interest of your citizens and taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you. Public comments.
Evening, Aaron Howerton, District 4 in Springdale. One thing I just want to recognize is that we still do not have a representative for District 4. I was very disappointed to hear about J.P. Anderson's passing this year, and I'm wondering if anyone could possibly speak to when we might see representative appointed from the governor. I'm assuming something's been made, no insight about who that might be or when that might happen. So I'm here without representation, which I find frustrating. But to this issue, I do want to call out the opposite sides of some of the conversations in terms of if we're concerned about runaway costs, if we're fighting on principle, and JP Lyons has stepped out. Yeah, I can hear myself fine. Anybody else have a problem? Sorry, I'm trying not to be over. I get really loud and talk really fast. Gotcha. So JP Lyons is concerned about runaway costs, but if this is a fight we're making on principle, historically, arguments based on principle, money's no object, right? We'll fight the good fight until we get the ruling we need or the ruling we want. We'll go through the process. This was judicious if two separate judges have already ruled against it, and it's really not even punitive damages, right? Like it's $6,000. It's like a clerical error. You guys messed up. Okay, next time do it right, please. This is your punitive damage. Let's move on. In terms of insurance isn't out. Did they fight that fight? Did they stand up for themselves? That's not how actuarial tables work. And if insurance is involved, I've worked in insurance. If there's an insurance defense out there, they should be funding the defense for the county. They would be pushing for this to keep their rates low and defend themselves. But where does insurance even get involved? That's speculative. What I see right now is if you're willing to spend this much money to appeal a ruling that's been done twice and it happens again, are you done? If it's on principle, no. But whose principle is it? The county is a group of people. It's a body of people. Clearly, we all have different opinions about this particular issue. So whose principles get to run the show? And how much money is too much money? How much will you spend in defense of what you believe is the right interpretation of a law? And at what point does the runaway cost end up just continuing to appeal and appeal and appeal and appeal up the chain? So I think the arguments are going both ways. Mostly, it is ridiculous to me as a citizen, especially one without representation, that this is going to continue to be an issue. I can appreciate that the county made a mistake. I can appreciate clerical errors happened. I can appreciate there probably is no malice whatsoever. That's a lot to assume, sure. But to continue fighting this fight and continue spending county dollars when I know for a fact there are other needs in the county and other things that we should all be spending our time on right now, that to me is offensive. I think this has been judicious. I would really appreciate seeing some sort of measured response in this outside of the continued escalation of something that's already been decided twice. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Public comments.
Good afternoon, Court. My name is Beth Koger. I live at 3661 East Embry Drive in Fayetteville. I'm also sitting on the Quorum Court here, and I was advised by the Arkansas Ethics Commission and my attorney that I should not speak on this from my JP seat. So that's why I'm taking up valuable public comment time to speak on this, because I just want to say to people who don't know that I didn't just rush out and file these lawsuits. The events leading to these lawsuits have been going on for the last 5 years. Finally, you know, you've reached the point where there's that one straw that breaks the camel's back, and you just have to take action to correct it. That's what I did. Susan said, 2 different judges have ruled 3 times in my favor that the county violated FOIA. But what I want to talk about now is, I'm just to be honest with you that this whole thing has been very stressful. Financially and emotionally, it's taken time away from my family. And I think most of us here have children, and I've thought about just giving up on this because it is financially and every way it's hard. But my children give me advice, and I take that advice sometimes. And my children keep close watch. They want to know where I am, what I'm doing, you know, like my most important job. They're like, you know, what are you doing? You know, nothing is more important than, you know, you being my mom. So anyway, they set me down this week and they gave me a good pep talk. And they were like, Mom, do not give up. They're trying to intimidate you. They have the power and the resources of the county. Do not back down. You're right. You have to stand up for what's right, and you're not standing up just for yourself. You're standing up for everybody in Washington County who has been affected by this or who might be affected if this practice is allowed to continue. And it's just something that was said about the people that I sued. The people I sued, they were the ones who violated the law. They were the parties to the lawsuit. That's why they were named. So I just want to say that I'm not giving up. I'm not going away. And if that's the plan, it's not working. Thank you.
Thank you. We have time for one more public comment. Do we have any additional public comments?
My name is Shannon Freese, and I live at 3982 Deerhurst Street. It's in District 6. The thing that I want to know is, from the court standpoint, what if this was just an individual in the county who had taken this against you? Would you still sue them? Or if it was an entity, would you sue them? Would you appeal it if you didn't get the ruling that you wanted? At the end of the day, yes, you serve the county, but it is county money that belongs to the people, not the 6 individuals that were listed in the lawsuit. She didn't sue the county, she sued 6 individuals. And from my point of view, those 6 individuals are throwing one of the biggest tantrums because they didn't get their way when Judge Warren, pardon me, when Judge Warren gave a ruling and when Judge Watkins gave a ruling. Pretty much what you guys are doing is telling us that the judges that ruled on this are baffling idiots, and that's what you believe. If you're going to take it to the next court, for the love of everything pure and holy, just pay the bill and move on. At best, it's $1,600 per person, and the county doesn't need to be involved at all. It was against an individual because they were listed. Anyway, that's my thought to it. Thanks.
Ms. Mason, will you please call a roll?
Robert Dennis. Yes. Suki Hires. No. Evelyn Rios Stafford. No. Gary Ricker.
Yes, ma'am.
Butch Pond.
Yes.
David Wilson.
Yes.
Sean Simons. Kyle Lyons.
Yes, ma'am.
Lisa Ecke. Yes. Charles Dean. Yes. Chandra Washington. No. Beth Koger.
That will move to a second reading at next month's Quorum Court meeting. With that, we're going to move to item number 12. This is a Beaver Lake Tiny Homes CUP appeal. I'd like to remind the court, if you guys will entertain us, we're going to hear from our department, our planning department. We're going to hear from the applicant, and then we're going to hear from any public comments that want to occur after that. What I'd ask you to do, after the presentations by the department and the applicant, if we could keep that time immediately following those presentations to questions of fact or more understanding. That's the way I would prefer to handle this. And then when we move to the next item on the agenda, then we can start the debate and or any motions that we would like to take up with this appeal, if that makes sense. With that, I'm going to turn it directly over to Director Atta unless we have any other questions or objections right now at this point. Director Atta?
Good evening. Thank you. So this is the Beaver Lake Tiny Homes Conditional Use Permit decision. The Planning Board denied the Beaver Lake CUP on March 30th. The 3 members voted in favor, 2 members voted against, and 2 were absent. and that puts it like into 3-2-1, and our ordinances says like we have to have the majority of the body out of 7, so that's why it's like denied, because it's 3 against 2. Next slide, please. An appeal was filed by the legal representation of the applicants on April 28th, citing comparables to property and proximity that matches the use of compliance for past and future, a vote against by the law of the commission, a vote held contradictory without a quorum present, and I guess like they refer to the planning board quorum, because of the request is reasonable, acceptable, and in like alignment with the past decision. Engineering is acceptable, reasonable, and within the confines of the property. So that's their argument, and that's why they're debating or appealing that like decision of denial. Yeah, on the 19th, 2 days ago, we received like planning received an email from the Mr. Crowley, who represented the applicants, that he is no longer representing them and he is no longer the legal counsel for them. And today I received a phone call from Mr. Will Wilkinson, and he's here today that he is going to be the new legal representation for the applicants. So that's the Beaver Lake Tiny Homes CUP, and that is the vicinity map. You can see there is a subdivision across the street with another like RV park, and that's like zoom in to the location. And this is like the number of neighbors that being informed and never been notified for the project. And this is basically the summary of the project. CUB sought for like development of 20 tiny homes, community in about like less than 5 acres land next to Beaver Lake. They are like pre-manufactured homes, 15 by 40 and 11 by 46, have occupancy of up to 2 people and up to 2 vehicles per private driveway. The property is in Saddle Shop Road, which is like in Springdale. Floodplain permit was issued by Washington County Planning on February 24th of this year. 4 adjacent neighbors opposed the CUP project, represented by attorney Robert Rhodes, who is here as well to represent them. And that's like the site plan of the project, and you can see the tiny homes on pads, and there is like a bunch of septic field like surrounding the entire like location. And there is like a boat, the concrete pad that shows like where the boats say parking is going to take place. And this is like the design of the septic that they presented to the state. And I received like an email today from the health department that says the septic currently, the status of the septic is currently not approved by the state health department. No approval of the septic permit yet. No permit has been approved nor denied. Basically, it's still in process. Arkansas Health Department normally approves 8 units permits for non-community water waste system. And that's what they're asking for. Otherwise, if it was like a community water waste system, it will need the approval of the state health department and ADEQ. And that is basically how the buildings they're gonna look like, pre-manufactured homes. Customers own the home and leases the home site property from the developer. So the owners of the property are still the developers themselves. You as a residents, you just own the house, not the property. Private driveway supports up to 2 vehicles, as mentioned earlier. The Beaver, we had like lots of technical comments and conditions. The biggest one was from Beaver Lake Water District, concerned about the density of the residences near like lakeside, and precedent for like further higher density development along the lake. Ensure that the septic waste pressure does not run off into the lake, and concerns about like the decentralization waste system, the stormwater asserts lake is not a stormwater detention basin for to ensure no change to the hydrograph occurs as a result of the additional impervious services. So basically, they're making sure nothing runoffs into the drinking water of Beaver Lake. The planning condition, we made it very simple but strict at the same time. So adhere to the Beaver Water District conditions to minimize effect of the Beaver Lake. Any further additions or modification to the project needs to become before the planning board and the planning office. And I was talking today to the applicant, and he said he apologized for making the poor choices of picking up a lawyer that he just abandoned them last minute, and he is going to take care of the payments, and he's going to send it to us soon.
Are there any questions for Director Ada at this time, or our planning department? Justice Koger?
Thank you. At the planning board, and if you said this, I missed it. This was for 27 prefab construction or house or tiny homes. Is that correct? 27?
It's 27 of them, yes, ma'am.
Okay. And something was said about getting approval from the Corps of Engineers. Has at the planning board, that was a concern. Has that been addressed?
We did not. I mean, I do not recall anything about Corps of Engineers, but it's mostly if it comes to the septic approval, it has to be approved by the state because of the density. It has to be approved by the Arkansas Health Department, which is they have a local office here, in Washington County, but they also coordinate with the state. So if anything approved there, they will know about it and they provide it. And I received a copy today of the permit itself. And that's the permit that's been submitted to the state for approval. So far, it does not have any fine number of approval. So, as I said, it's still in process, so it doesn't mean it's been approved. And they don't normally say it's denied. This is it's not approved. So.
Okay, well, so we don't need approval from the Corps of Engineers?
No, for now, no. I mean, we haven't received anything from. No, we did not request any approval from them.
Okay. Okay, that was just something I had a question mark by that I didn't remember what happened on that. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Justice Lyons?
Thank you, Judge. Director Ada, go back to the communication you got from the health department. It had something in there about 8 units.
This one here, it would be slide.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not.
If you go up more, please. A little bit more. This one here. Yeah, yes. Yes, sir.
Yeah,
so what they're asking for is
8-unit permits for non-community water.
Yes, that's what they're trying. They're applying for non-community waterway system. So it's not centralized. It's decentralized for multiple of them. And if you go up a little bit, one more,
so your
you can see
picture
that's their
indicated
septic
a
design.
centralized septic, didn't it? Does that change? I thought the picture indicated a centralized septic. Did that change?
It's not centralized. It's decentralized. They have different zones. You can see zone A, B, and C. So each one of them is gonna have its. They're gonna have a number of homes that goes to number A, a number of homes goes to B, a number of homes goes to C.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Justice Pond?
Now, what was it you said about Beaver Water District?
Yes, Beaver Water District, they were concerned about the runoff because it's it's too close to them, to their water sources, basically. And by state regulation, you have to have the septic system at least a minimum of 100 feet away from any water resources, or lake, stream, well, et cetera, et cetera. So I guess they're within the closed limit of 100 feet, and they don't enforce as much as they suggest, and that's just suggestion. Make sure that this doesn't end up the waste, or if anything fails as a system, it doesn't up in the drinking water of Beaver Lake.
Okay, it probably pertains something to, you got a decentralized waste treatment system, but it's You don't have a septic tank for each home, each unit?
No, it's gonna be like few homes for that center, like septic, and few for this and few for this, so they can cover the entire thing, so it's gonna be
Is
decentralized.
that kinda like having several different smaller step systems?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Justice Dennis?
Thank you, Judge. Who's going to enforce that there's only 2 cars? Who's going to enforce how many four-wheelers there are? Who's going to enforce how many parked boats there are? Who's going to enforce how many RVs are parked there? Who's going to enforce how many motorcycles stay there? Who's going to enforce the spilled oil, the pollution, the antifreeze, the windshield antifreeze, someone adding oil to their gasoline because they're going to put it in their boat, the mixing the gas and the oil together? I grew up around the lake. I know all those things occur accidentally, but they occur, and they occur on a regular basis. Also, who's going to put up a bond to pay for the damages done by the septic systems when they fail? Because we have septic systems all over this county that are failing today, and nobody wants the responsibility anymore. The builders just build it and then they're gone. You know, I can name them in West Fork, name them in Farmington, I can name them County 62. They don't do the job. They don't do the job like intended. I know everybody's intentions are good.
Absolutely.
But I'm tired of seeing the messes. And it just makes me sick that our drinking water comes from Beaver Lake, and we pour all this pollution into it, and we build homes all over the place up there, and I won't go about Fayetteville. I'll get in trouble for that one. But, you know, I will. Fayetteville sewer water goes into the Beaver Lake. And, you know, it's just how much can the water take? And then we've got more and more people coming into the area, so you use more and more water. That means it's
Produce
circulated quicker, and you're gonna get more pollution in your water. I mean, that you can clean anything, but it's gonna be a cost to pay. And, so, I didn't hear you give me any answers. I'll shut up now.
So the
and
planning
let you
department,
answer.
like, it's known to.
Who's gonna be responsible for it in 12 years?
The planning department regulates, they don't enforce, and so we're hoping that like the health department with collaboration with the applicants, if this passes, like they like maintain like good faith and like they communicate with them and keep everything in check. And that's everything like we're hoping for.
Glad you said that. Nobody took care of Valley View Golf Course, did they? It's a big mess. And now then it's a big mess that the people who bought the houses are paying for. And they're paying a tremendous amount to the tune of almost $100 a month for their additional sewer.
I understand.
So I guess I'm saying all those things where when I vote no, you'll understand why.
Yeah.
Justice Lyons?
Thank you, Judge. Director, I had 2 questions
Yes, sir.
regarding the points of appeal that were provided.
Oh, yeah.
The one point of appeal was a vote held contradictory without a quorum present. Is there any, was the quorum present? What you had?
We had 5 people, so that's quorum enough. We
That's
needed
quorum. So
just
you had
4.
quorum, so that's an inaccurate statement.
Yes, sir.
For an appeal standpoint. Thank you. The other one, just above that, is a vote against the bylaws of the commission.
Well, that's his like opinion. That's like the lawyer's opinion, so we did not omit anything.
But from as far as you know, we abided, the vote was by ordinance by the planning board.
Well, as everyone knows, like we present fairly and like we're waiting on their decision. So they made the decision 3-2. That's nothing like we can control. Like so it's not that we enforce like that. Hey, go ahead, like and vote that way or that way. So.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Director Atta? Thank you, Director Atta.
Thank you.
Before I bring up the applicant, are there any other state or county agencies that would like to comment on this project present this evening? Okay, with that, we're going to hear from the applicant. Who is there? Good evening, sir.
Good evening. My name is Will Kellstrom here on behalf of the applicant Ram Holdings. So, as Sam just described, what we have here is 4.82 acres and we're asking for 27 units. A little bit of history on this item. This went to Planning Board on March 30th of this year. There were lots of questions about septic, as there have been tonight. There have been some questions and concerns about the look of the park, the density, and its compatibility. The board voted 3-2 and the item failed, and we appealed it to Quorum Court, or I didn't, but the previous attorney did. This has been tabled several times, as I'm sure y'all are aware. We have been delaying this, and we appreciate y'all's patience to try to iron out some of these details about septic. Now, that's not because we're required to do under the code, as I'm going to explain in a second, but because we are trying to make a good faith effort to make everybody feel good about this project. And I do want to stress before getting started that the planning board, we only needed 4 votes to get this passed, and we got 3, so it was close. So a description of the project, I want to call out some differences between tiny homes and trailers. Tiny homes have high quality, expensive exterior materials, front porches, high quality interiors. They're more expensive generally, and they're harder to move than trailer homes. Tiny homes are generally permanently attached to the ground, and they will be here. There's pictures in your packet where you can see what these look like. They look like little houses. So this is not a trailer park. I can't stress this enough. They're tiny homes. One of the investors in this project has built one of these next to my house in Rogers. And I can tell you they've been good neighbors. It's a nice, clean, quiet community full of older citizens. Lawns stay mowed. Everyone's got neat yards, no junk anywhere. It's a nice neighborhood. So when considering a conditional use permit, there are 7 factors in the code that everyone has to consider. And these factors are all we should be considering when we're looking at conditional use permits. Questions of drainage, access, septic, water, and infrastructure concerns like that are left for site plan review. And so I want to stress that tonight you are not approving a development plan. You are simply approving a use. If we were here asking to build 27 normal homes within the density constraints of the code, we wouldn't have to get a conditional use permit. We're only here because it happens to be manufactured homes. So tonight we're essentially discussing one question: does this use fit into the surrounding area? I'm here to tell you that it does. If you approve this tonight, you will not have to worry about whether we get our septic permits or anything like that, because we can't build it if we don't get the approvals we need. If we don't meet the code, if we don't get health department ADEQ approval, we can't build our project. So here's the factors, and I've got the code in front of me. Whether the applicant has filed a written application and the fee has been paid. We did file an application. I just learned just now the fee hadn't been paid, but I can assure you we can take care of that. The applicant has notified the neighbors. There are adequate utilities, roads, drainage, and other public services that will be made available. The proposed use is compatible with the surrounding area. The use will not be detrimental to or endanger the public health, safety, welfare, morals, comfort. The conditional use will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other properties, and the conditional use will not impede the normal and orderly development of surrounding areas. So, as for adequate roads, drainage, infrastructure, things like that, we need to show that they will be made available, and we have already submitted plans. We're working on it. We will know whether these permits will or won't happen before we get to the site plan stage. If we don't get them, the site plan doesn't get approved. Compatible with surrounding uses. The surrounding uses are single family on large lots on Saddle Shop, and then there is an RV park and a subdivision across the street that has at least 100 units, but I stopped counting once I got to 100. This is a single family residential use. It's 27 homes. There's 100 homes across the street. As stated before, these are marketed to older adults looking to downsize and live in a more rural area. At the previous meeting, it was stated that the area has a rural character. Take a look at the site plan in front of you. The homes are clustered together. In most places, this is referred to as a cluster development. When you cluster homes close together like this, what you end up with is an abundance of green space. The density stays the same, but the green space is expanded. It's a lot more green space than you get in a typical subdivision style development, like what's on the other side of 412. In that sense, I would say this development is more fitting to the rural character of the area than that subdivision is. The RV park across the street has 300 spaces. You go look at an aerial right now, there's about 100 RVs there. And they're trying to add 120 more. I don't know if that's been approved, but that's what I'm being told. That RV park doesn't have any restrictions on what those RVs look like. We can guarantee that our houses are going to look like this. So next one, detrimental to health, safety, welfare. I want to put some numbers out for y'all. 27 units at 4.82 acres. We recently had a survey that is 4.82 acres. Is 5.6 units an acre. Across the street, there's a subdivision with quarter-acre lots. Some are smaller than that. That's about 4 units an acre. We're pretty close to that. But here's some more interesting numbers. These tiny homes have an average occupancy of 1.14 people. They're tiny. They're 500 to 600 square feet. You can't hardly fit more than one person in, maybe a couple, but it's older people. There's not kids running around. The average household size in America is about 2.5 people. So at 5.6 units an acre with 1.4 people in the household on average, that's 6.3 people per acre. Across the street, 4 units per acre times 2.5 people per household, that's 10 people an acre. Those houses are generating almost twice as much traffic, consuming twice as much water, and producing twice as much sewage as what this would. This is a very low intensity use. Again, that RV park has 300 spots. To allow a subdivision across the street that's 4 times as big, that has a greater impact, more people per household, and to deny this, 27 houses, about 1 person each in them, seems a little arbitrary. To allow a 300-unit RV park across the street and to deny 27 tiny homes seems a little arbitrary. Not injurious to the use and enjoyment of surrounding properties. This kind of falls in the same vein as stuff I've discussed, but again, I live next to one of these. It's a nice, quiet, clean development. They make good neighbors. And finally, will not impede the normal and orderly development further in the county. This parcel is sandwiched between a U.S. highway and core property. It doesn't touch any other property. So I'm going to address a couple comments that were made by the public at the last meeting, and then I'm going to wrap this thing up. Beaver Water District says the density is too great. The density across the street, when you factor in how many people are in those houses, is actually a lot greater. This is a lot lower density than what's already there. If the septic fails, it drains right into the drinking water. If a house slides down the mountain into Beaver Lake, that also pollutes the water. But we allow them to build there, presumably because the building code protects us. It prevents that from happening. The septic system in this case is no different. On that note, we are putting in extremely effective state-of-the-art system. My client is here. He's happy to answer questions about that. If you guys want to hear more about what he's building, I implore you to ask him about it. ADEQ and Arkansas Health Department have not approved. They don't have to. We're just talking about the use. We're not at the site plan yet. There was comments about a driveway having to be put over a ravine and how that would drain into the lake. We have access from Highway 412. We already have the DOT permit. That's not going to be an issue. Incompatible with surroundings. Everything around it is RSF 1 units per acre. That's not really true, as I've just said. And then everyone pulling out onto 412 and the traffic that it'll generate, again, is significantly less than what's already there. So, Justice Dennis, you had some questions about how can we enforce these things. Y'all, as a board, have full authority and power to impose conditions on this permit and make extra rules for us. If you want to see a limit on 2 cars per house, you can do that tonight, and we'll have to do it. If you want to see a limit on how many boats and 4-wheelers per house, you can put a limit on that tonight, and we're going to have to do it. Y'all can put conditions on the permit like that. As for who is going to take care of the septic system, as Sam said, the owner of this project is going to own the dirt. you can put a condition on it that makes them impose covenants on themselves that say they have to maintain it. And those covenants will be locked in forever. You can't get rid of them, filed in real estate records. You can do stuff like that. So, in wrapping this all up, when you're looking at a conditional use permit, there's 7 factors in the code, and that's what we should be considering. Not anything having to do with the septic and the water and the drainage. These are all things that will be considered in the site plan review phase. And if we can't meet those requirements, we can't build. You're not approving a development tonight. You're approving a use. The planning board almost voted this in. It was 3-2. So all we want is for the board to look at these criteria and compare to what is already there in a traditional subdivision across the street, and all we really want is a fair shake on this deal, just for y'all to listen to us and kind of take these factors into account. So with that, I'm here for questions. My client is here for questions. He would love to tell y'all all you want to hear about that septic system. Thank y'all for allowing me the time to speak.
Thank you, sir. Question for the applicant or the applicant's counsel? Justice Dennis?
Since I lived this, I guess my questions are a little bit harsh sounding. I know it sounds wonderful the way you described it. Old people can live close to the lake. I see things the way they are and how things have changed in the last 72 years because I've been here that long. And boy, has it changed. And just because someone else does something wrong doesn't mean that we should go ahead and do something that's wrong too. You made that comment that, oh, well, this one's not going to be near as dense as the one that's already there. I didn't get to vote on what the ones that are already there done. I'm just blown away by Beaver Lake allowing so much building on it, but that's another story, I guess, but still. You said something about if you don't put up a bond, are you going to put up bonds? I'll ask you the question. Are you putting up bonds?
If it's required by code, we will, yes.
So what if I declare, if I were the developer, I don't want to talk about your developer because it might get a lawsuit. I'll talk about me. If I were your developer and I developed it and then I took loss or bankruptcy, who's then held responsible for it?
You can have us impose covenants on the development that makes the owners of those lots liable for it.
Yes, and that's what happened to Valley View, and it's bringing on lawsuits, it's bringing along complaints, so that doesn't work. You have to have a better answer for me because I've seen it, and the people who bought the houses are now having to pay the $7 million to run a new sewer line to take care of the failure. So my question is, if I'm the developer, will I have to pay for anything if I take a lawsuit? I mean, a bankruptcy?
I'm not a bankruptcy attorney. I can't comment on that.
Okay.
I mean,
well, that's what I see as something that can happen that takes away all the responsibilities of your developer.
We are just like any other developer in the county. All we can do is follow the rules and do to the best of our ability to put in a good product and make it safe and clean. As to speculate on the future, I don't know. But all we can do is our best. And that's, I don't mean at all to downplay your concerns about some other developers who have not done a good job. So.
Okay, thank you. You said you could guarantee what your homes are going to look at. How are you going to guarantee it in 5 years from now?
If you put a condition on this permit that says the homes must have, so for example, in Rogers, they have a municipal code that says tiny homes are defined as follows. They must have, one of these, at least 4 of these 6 elements. Front porches, a certain roof pitch, certain elements that make it a more attractive product and make it look like a home. If you want to impose something like that on us, they're the same homes we use up there, that would be no problem for us to meet. If you wanted to impose restrictions that ensure that this thing ain't gonna be a trailer park in 10 years, I think we're perfectly fine with that.
Okay, thank you. One other thing that you'd said was that they were gonna cluster the houses together so that you'd have more green space. Who's gonna keep someone from moving a storage building in there for someone to live on, or a old broke-down RV? Because that happens right here in Fayetteville, out at Lowe's. There's a broke-down RV out there, and they live in it, they sleep in the cars, and they basically are squatting the parking places west of Lowe's. I see it 3 times a week.
I think that's a good question. I mean, again, you guys have a unique power with these permits in that once this permit, if this permit is approved, what it will say is 27 homes and nothing else. It's anything else is going to be unpermitted and illegal.
You're missing my point. My point is, we have laws about what's happening, and we're not able to do anything about what is happening around us. So you know, the responsibility is the people who build it and who develop it, and
I mean, to that end, I think
who
that
buy it, because they can do what they want to with their land. If they want to move something in, they can move it in.
Well, I mean, again, to that end, it would be illegal under this permit, and I would say that the same risk exists of anyone doing anything illegal anywhere. I mean, you know,
Agreed.
you can't physically
Agreed.
restrain people from breaking the law if they want to.
Agreed. And so that's why we need to be very careful about approving something, because once you approve it, things can go wrong. And it's like this, you're having to pay for what someone else has done, what someone else has done incorrectly. I still remember coming to the Quorum Court meeting and sitting where you are and asking the Quorum Court what you're gonna do about the septic system out there at Valley View. And they all said, don't worry about it. We're gonna take care of it. As long as I'm here, we'll take care of it. I don't see a one of them standing up and saying, I'll help pay that $5 million or that $7 million to run you a new sewer line. So I'm just kind of explaining where I'm coming from, because you're probably saying, oh, boy, what's his deal? My deal is I've seen it fail.
I understand, and there are bad actors out there, but if y'all want to suggest things to put in this permit as conditions, Brian can explain how that works to y'all. We're happy to consider them and work with y'all.
You're happy to consider them?
I mean, so if you were to require that every home was gonna be 1,000 square feet, that'd probably tank the project, for example. But, I
Yes.
mean, you know, yeah, certainly, we're happy to work with y'all. I mean, if you put something out there that's a deal breaker for either one of us, and either one of us can't do it, that's, you know.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Justice Ricker?
I've just got a couple of clarification questions, mainly because I can't tell anything from that map. This property borders Corps of Engineer property, so basically lake frontage almost.
I mean, I guess it depends on how you define lake frontage.
Between you and the lake, there's nothing and will never be anything, right? It belongs to the Corps?
I do believe that's the case,
Okay,
yes.
the property you keep referring to across the highway, is it lake frontage, the subdivision and the RV park?
I believe that subdivision does affront the lake.
Okay. It's hard for me to tell looking at the black and white map up there. Now, and also the other clarification, way I understood, you were saying the property will stay with your developer or someone else, but the homes will belong to the occupants.
That's correct.
So if an occupant lives there and quits making payments on that, you move the house out, or what happens?
You know, I'm not sure the answer to that question. I believe that Dave Gallo answered that in the last meeting. I mean, from what I understand, the house stays there. I think that if a person wants to buy a home, or if wants to move a home off the lot, I believe what generally happens is they buy another home from the owner and take it somewhere else. But you know, it's not like this in any trailer park.
Well, you said these are permanently, they have a foundation basically.
Yeah, they'll have a concrete block skirt, as I believe. So I mean, in theory, you could pick them up and move them. But I mean, if you go to Crystal Bridges, they picked up a whole Franklin Ride
the
house.
occupants of the house don't own the property; they pay a monthly fee for it.
They rent the dirt. Yes.
Okay, Thank you.
Justice Secchi?
Thank you, Judge. Along those questions, that was my question on property owner, homeowner. So these are not just for rent, they are for, this is gonna be their home. A mortgage is gonna be taken out on the home. So then the property owner is responsible for paying property taxes. I don't know if, Mr. Atta, if we have this, that the property owner is always responsible for the septic or any other breaches that is made. Is that already in part of our?
Nice meeting you. So part of our ordinances says that there is like an array of information here, but like one of them says, this applies only in the unincorporated areas of the county. So, and it does not apply to mobile homes, and that's why they're calling them tiny homes, so not mobile homes. And the other thing, basically you need to have like one entity that like operates and own the septic plus the parcel. So if you own the parcel, if you own the septic, it has to be on your parcel as an owner. So you have to own the property plus the property plus the septic. So you have to maintain it, because like let's say like this fails, for instance. So who's going to be blamed? Is it like the people who is using the septic or the property owner who does not live there?
Well, according to our ordinance, it's the property owner,
Yep.
correct?
The property owner has to own the septic, but like in this case, the property owner like does not, because he does not use the house. So it would be back and forth.
Could that be a part of the conditional use, that the owner owns the property owner?
It's an ordinance, so.
It's in the ordinance? I don't know why I'm not seeing that ordinance on here, or all of that information. I apologize if I'm asking redundant questions, if information's already available to us. I'm missing it. So
It was
once
discussed
again-
during the planning board, like it's ordinance number 2007-18.
Okay, so that was during the planning board
Yes,
meeting?
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, gosh, okay, thank you. I thought it was a meeting I was going, I can't believe I missed that. Thank you for clarifying.
Absolutely.
I'm just pondering. Do we have that information on our computers, or no?
I doubt like you have it, but because like they reached the decision, the planning board reached the decision after like we discussed all this information. I did not provide it, but it's like the ordinance. If you want me to email you the ordinance, I can.
Would you please?
Yeah,
That way I
absolutely.
can understand exactly who is going to be the responsible party. Boy, that was fast email. I appreciate that service.
Absolutely.
Thank you,
No
sir.
worries.
With a smile.
You didn't see this in an email, so.
Back to questions for the applicant. Any additional questions for the applicant this time? Justice Coger?
Okay, my question is, I'm looking at the Beaver Water District conditions, and I take it there's not anyone here tonight from the Beaver Water District, but what about this, the runoff that says, let me see, Beaver Water District asserts that Beaver Lake is not a stormwater detention basin. So what about the runoff from the stormwater? I mean, where's that going to go? Into the lake?
Well, I don't know, because we haven't engineered it yet. This is not a fully engineered set of plans. This is a question that will have to be adequately addressed at a meeting in which a plan is approved, or it won't happen. If we cannot meet, I believe that Sam said that Beaver Water District gives suggestions, and then they require that those suggestions be complied with. If we can't meet those suggestions or requirements, then we can't build it. So it's a valid question, and I wish I had an answer to it, but if we can't answer it, we can't build it. there's another step in this process.
Okay, I'll give that.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you, sir. Would you like to say something, sir? I know counselors probably has done it, but will you please introduce yourself and let us know what your involvement is, sir?
Jonathan McJunkins. I live in Lowell, 4389 Looper Road in Lowell. This is my project. This is my piece of property. I bought it a few years ago, and we came in front of the Planning Commission looking for a CUP on 7 food trucks in the beginning. We were going to put some food trucks out there for the community. They were really looking forward to it. Really didn't understand what I was going to do with the property in the long term. Ended up not moving forward with the food trucks. Another one opened up just up the road and changed my mind a little bit. I met Dave Gallo in Rogers, and he has 2 of these developments in Rogers, one of them Montagne, one of them Olive Street. If you visit these, it is retired older people sitting on their porch, reading the newspaper, drinking their coffee in a well-manicured, well-managed area. There's a site manager that lives on site that manage a set of rules and regulations for the whole community. And what we found is the community is usually 55 years or older. They are downsizing out of 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom houses that they can't maintain in the city, and they're moving out and living more sustainable. That is what we want to replicate. We want to replicate a set of rules, which we have a packet already created that they're enforcing in Rogers. A set of rules and regulations for the community, and that community wants rules and regulations. They don't want loud noises or motorcycles or an RV squatting or any of those things. They want everyone next to them abiding by the exact same rules, because at that age, that makes sense, correct? And it hit a nerve with me because I have some relatives that are getting elderly. They have big houses. I just had a relative that got out of surgery, a big surgery. She's 82 years old. She wants to be one of the first ones here because she has a 3-bedroom house and she can hardly even rehabilitate to walk. She'll get there, absolutely get there, but they're seeing these opportunities to downsize and live more sustainable and have someone else managing everything else. And that's the whole idea of this project. This project will not have 7 22-year-olds renting out a cabin, partying on the lake. It's not going to happen. There will be no Airbnbs. There will be no rental rates. There will be a very strict rules and regulations that my site manager that lives on site in one of the homes, he or she will occupy one of the homes, will enforce those. So the other piece of it that I wanted to address was the septic. That is everyone, including myself, that's the biggest subject. The systems that the approval stage that the Department of Health is in now, we met with them all last week. There was 3 PhDs out there. You have an email from one of them, Mr. Richard. There was 2 doctors, Dr. Larry West, both with PhDs in soil management, and they had a large debate out there last week. Not is the soil approved. The soil is approved. All they're trying to approve at this point is what's the dispersal field going to look like. The system you have up right now is a treatment facility. So it's not a conventional system where your brother-in-law backed over the septic pipe or the D-box. This system pumps into another one, it drills it down into a drip line, and they are in very short systems. So the septic field that is up there today it looks large, it's a huge green space, but only half of it is going to be used. Last week, they came up with another dispersal field, which I think we shared with Sam, and this is brand new. They're out of Massachusetts, and they have one in Garfield they just tested last year, and it even takes the septic field down even more, half of that. We're talking 1,500 square feet. So what comes out into the leach field is almost clean. when it goes into the leach field. The leach field will be excavated and backfilled with sand, so there is no way any of the leach, if it does get out of there unclean, even gets out of the sand. So the system is, it's not a normal PVC pipe, you know, running by the lake. And also, we met all of the requirements from the Corps to find the base flood elevation, and then to move 100 feet inland off that base flood elevation, and then we went another 40 feet. So we are over even what the Corps suggested, or what the laws and regulations are for even being on water with a septic system. We went another 40%. So this is started with my family. It's going to end with my family on that property. We want to do something for them, and I want folks to live more sustainable and have that option. And I see it done in Rogers and Montagnais at a high level, and we want to replicate that. So that's what I have. Anybody got any questions?
Thank you, sir. Justice Rios Stafford?
Thank you, Judge. See, you mentioned that there are two others of these that already exist. One in, do you know what the addresses are, the names of those? So if I wanted to look them up?
Yes. Yes, we can provide them. You want them right now?
If you could, in public.
Olive Street is one of them. You can look up Eagle Homes on Google.
Okay.
And it should get you right to Dave's place. And you should walk through one of those. It's pretty interesting.
And I could find them both if I look under Eagle Homes?
Eagle
Or if the
Homes, I
public
think you
wanted
can
to-
find one of them. I'm not certain you can find his new one. He's about half done with his new one. You
Okay.
got it? Okay. Okay.
Okay. Are they both under this Eagle Homes website?
It's like Mayberry
On
when you walk through
Montagnais,
there.
okay.
It's
And
outstanding.
the Rogers one is called something else, I guess.
I'm sorry?
The Rogers one is called something else. I'm just trying to get it on for the
I know
public's-
the one in Rogers is Olive Street, and it's called Eagle Homes. I don't believe he's got a new name for his new development.
Okay. And are either one of those on the lake or a lake?
No.
No, okay.
No, they're right in the middle of the city.
They're
or,
both-
or Rogers is, and the other one's in Montagnais,
Okay.
not on
And-
the lake.
And how are those two developments handling their septic?
Sewer.
Oh, they're both on sewer. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so this would be the first one of these that would be on a septic system.
A high-tech septic.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That was
Yes, ma'am.
my questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Justice Dennis?
Thank you, Judge. It sounds like you're a local as far as been around for a while, but you're a young man. Have you ever seen, has this ever been flooded? This land, has it ever been flooded by the lake?
It's a good question. So, and that's why we kind of went with the food trucks first, is because the flood maps do show, you know, it's half the property. You know, those are a guesstimate in many cases. The new flood maps of 2020 and FEMA do not. We found out that by taking the Department of Health out there and pinpointing these where the flood maps were to show. The flood map that's up there today is outdated and it's nowhere near flood. The Dr. Larry West, who has I have a really long markup from him, 40 years. He's one of the professors at U of A as well. He came out there and did a study and got in the pits and wrote us up a markup saying that is an existing river terrace from thousands of years ago. And that ground has not flooded. If it did flood, it was 100 years ago.
No, it wouldn't have flooded then. It floods because it's dammed up. Now, I mean, Beaver Lake is,
This property is kind of like a peninsula. It's got three sides of a lake, so it hasn't. And when you get down where we're going to be hopefully building at, there is 1 inch of fall on the entire property. So there's the stormwater runoff. I'd be worried more about what's coming off of the highway because the highway runoff runs right between my property and the highway, and there's never. It's large, so there's not any water that creeps on the property. And also on the other side is a large ravine that diverts any storm water as well. I have never seen water standing on there.
where's the 2-ton water out, where it takes it out of the lake for water use from Blue Eye? It's just before Hickory Creek, isn't it?
I'm not certain.
Okay, I think it's real close to you.
Hickory Creek would be not very close. It'd be ways away. I live by Hickory Creek in Lowell. It'd be several miles.
Well, the drinking water for northwest Arkansas comes from Beaver Lake.
Yes, sir.
And it comes pretty close to there.
Right, and I believe Will's, Mr. Watkins, his attorney with him as well, his partner with him, is on the board, Beaver Lake Water District. And we have taken every precaution. I mean, even these systems are, $150,000 septic systems. They're not $10,000. It's an impressive treatment.
I've seen the $1 million ones.
Also, on that point, it is regulated by the Department of Health that you do have to have someone inspecting those systems throughout the year. I signed that. On the permit that's included there, Bud Moore Septic Systems is the person who signed it as well, that says he will be inspecting any of the septic systems throughout the year. So he's got regulations he has to meet throughout the year to approve that septic as it goes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
With that, we're going to open this up to public comments. Good evening, sir. Will you please introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Robert Rhodes, and I'm a lawyer with the law firm of Hall Estill, and I am representing 4 neighbors, surrounding neighbors of this project. And if I could just ask the question regarding timing-wise, if I'm representing 4 separate neighbors, between myself and our engineer, who is also going to talk, it's probably no more than about 10 minutes. Is that within your rules? Or is
You're
that
lucky
okay?
because 10 minutes is the golden time, so.
Okay, thank you.
You're good to proceed.
Thank you so much. Okay, those neighbors being Rick Wharton, Wayne Arnold, Gregory Hawthorne, and Rick Smith. As you probably know, according to the Beaver Lake Water District, our lake serves over 400,000 customers clean water, and that in the next 25 years, that number will at least double. In regard to Beaver Lake Water District, in a March 9th email to the Washington County Planning Department, in which they were asked to comment on this CUP, the district said, quote, "This development has too high density for lakeside use," end quote. Further, end quote, the density community on the lakeshore will result in unwanted septic waste pressure to the water quality of the lake. Should a septic system fail this close to the lake, there is no buffer to prevent raw sewage from draining directly into our drinking water source, end quote. The Water District went on to discuss the fact that there are no county ordinances or regulations requiring a regular inspection of these type of septic systems so close to the lake, and they consider that a real issue in light of the, quote, "too many nightmare scenarios here in northwest Arkansas of long failed systems," end quote. So the organization that is charged with the responsibility of taking care of our drinking water, the drinking water that you want your kids and your grandkids to enjoy, well, that organization, as you can tell, believes there's good reason why this development should not happen here. I'd also tell you that the developer's own engineer, in a February 24th letter to the Planning Department, said, quote, "Regarding the drainage, all runoff is directed into the lake," end quote. According to Beaver Lake Water District, they strongly believe that, quote, "Beaver Lake is not a storm water detention basin," end quote. So again, for those reasons, the Water District would oppose this CUP. Further, in regard to the septic system, there are leach fields, which according to the developer's plat that is provided to the Planning Department that you've seen, calls for a leach field in the middle of this development. One of the conditions suggested by Planning Department is that parking be prohibited in that leach field. My question would be, prohibited or not prohibited, what happens if somebody does park in those leach fields, turns around their boat trailer or a UPS van? Again, you're asking for trouble of a breached septic system. Further, there has been no pre-approval of this system within the Arkansas Department of Environmental Quality, nor the Department of Health. As you can see, they've been working on that for months and months, but they still don't have that approval. And yes, I understand that that's something they could do later, but wouldn't it be better to have that approval on the front end? I realize those approvals would be required if this CUP passes, but it would seem that it'd be more prudent for this body to deny it right now and not have to depend on the ADQ or the Department of Health denying or not denying permits. Another issue brought up in the staff report is water capacity. Although there is water on this property, it's very limited here, weak pressure. That doesn't necessarily bode well either. Further, according to the developer's drawings and plats, it appears that their ingress and egress, their driveway, will be over a massive ravine which is over the, quote, flowage easement owned by the Corps of Engineers, end quote. That's according to the Beaver Lake Shoreline Management Map. There has been nothing that I've seen where anyone has gotten the written permission from the Corps of Engineers. In our discussions with septic system design specialists, he indicates that this would be a real issue with the Corps. And further, there may be an issue with the, quote, high water elevation mark, end quote. That is something that the Corps requires at least 100 feet setback from whatever that mark may be for this part of the lake. And I can tell you, as I visited the site, when I looked down this ravine where they intend to build the road, when you look down there, you can probably tell, and you can tell in the pictures of the staff report, there's lake water. It's a viable finger of the lake. So again, it would seem that granting this CUP would be quite premature in lack of the approval by the Corps. Finally, in reviewing the staff's report, it would be extremely clear that this development is incredibly incompatible with its surroundings. According to the staff report, if you look in any direction, any one of those directions are zoned agricultural, single-family residential, 1 unit per acre. The staff report has this development out to be 6.2 units per acre, 6 times greater than surrounding it. That is 60-plus people with at least 60 cars, and all these cars pulling out of Saddle Shop Lane into a divided 4-lane Highway 412. Again, it's incompatible, potentially dangerous traffic issues, so I'd argue that you deny this appeal. Now, they talked about the fact that fees are going to be paid. The fees have been owed for months and months. If they can't do that small thing, can they do the big things? It looks like they're talking about changing to this 8-unit septic. I dare say, and maybe our engineer can maybe speak a little bit more clearly on this, I believe that will allow them not to have to go to the ADQ to get a permit by going that route. Do you want something where the ADQ doesn't have to weigh in on this? I wouldn't. And then you talk about 1 person per home. I don't know what stops this from people renting out and having multiple people there, partying on the lake and so forth. Again, the engineer is, he'll introduce himself, you'll know him, and if you have any questions for me, I'll be right back there. Thank you.
Hi there, Nathan Crouch, not an engineer. A planner, though. And what I do as a planner is a whole lot of research. Thank you. Ma'am, do you have my slides? Would you like to give you the cue as, thank you. And I have a short script, and I'm going to read through it, and I'm going to be doing this a couple times. We're on the first slide. All right, let's just dive right in. Beaver Water District has reviewed the development for potential impact to the lake, and they're opposing the development. We've heard about this. The other septic systems in the area, approximately neighborhood of 175 homes over in Blue Springs Village, across Highway 412. Not to mention the RV park, River's Edge RV Park. Whenever I counted on Google Earth, I see about 125 RV spaces, not 300. However, it wasn't approved for 125, it was approved for far less. And if you're familiar with county ordinances, you can expand your development by less than an acre as often as you want. And so I don't doubt that they're inching in on 300 units, but I wonder if anybody here has approved that. The answer is no, they haven't. If you wouldn't mind flipping a couple slides. These are just a couple different images of the property. One more, please. And then here we can, I believe this is the septic design designed by Sam Dunn. No doubt, 3 different zones, 9 homes per zone. If they're talking about going down to you know, the other kind of septic system, I'd be interested in you know, what that would entail. If you wouldn't mind, please. And one more. And here you can see all the little blue dots show all the homes over in Blue Springs Village. And then just to the east of Blue Springs Village, you can see where the RV park is. Then there's another RV park behind it, and then another one just to the north of it. And they all drain into the normal drainage system, the hollers that feed into the lake. But they drain across other people's property before they get to the lake, so they're not using the lake as their own detention pond, like this property is. One more slide, please. Here you can see just a little bit closer image of Blue Springs Village, just less than, you know, a 1/5 of a mile to the north there. And I don't know if you can notice in all the backyards, all the stripes in the backyards. If you look on Google Earth back in September 2010, there was a drought. And you can see everyone's septic systems when there's in a drought. Fun fact, you can look anywhere in the county in September 2010 and see septic systems. It's kind of fun. One more slide, please. So this slide shows, let me get to my correct notes. Online, this is a drainage easement, and pardon me while I jump out of my seat just so I can point real quick. Up in here. Basically in the median of the highway is where this drainage easement begins and comes on down and then goes into the holler, heading into the lake that this development is proposing to cross with their driveway. All of the stormwater drainage from River's Edge RV Park goes into that. It goes into a culvert on the north side of the road and then comes out on this side of the road into that holler. All the drainage from the Baptist church east of the RV park comes down, flows through the RV park and into this holler as well. It's not just this property that this is affecting. It's affecting the stormwater drainage from many properties upstream. And then I've got a lot of notes on you know, section 11-200, and I could get into it, but y'all know what I'm going to say. You know, that it is compatible with the surrounding area. Well, is it? The proposed use is not compatible with surroundings at all based on zoning, drainage, septic, and the lake and the traffic on the county road. You know. Let's go ahead and flip one more slide then. Here you can see the floodplain. This is the floodplain map, and yes, the floodplain goes all the way up into to the high end of that holler. And yes, there is a new floodplain map proposed. It's not accepted yet. It's not adopted. So this is the floodplain map that's effective. This area right here is the top end of the floodplain where they plan on bridging in order to come out on Saddle Shop Road with their driveway. This area is where all that drainage upstream comes in. There's a culvert right there, just a big old pipe that comes out and sends all that drainage water down into the holler right there. One more slide, please. On this one, this is the Beaver Lake shoreline map that Mr. Rhodes mentioned, and you can see the flowage easement. You can see the high water line. You know, this is published, and it's Corps of Engineers. It's federal. One more slide, please. And these last two slides are the two developments that J.P. Rio Stafford was asking about. One off Olive Street, and the other one, I forget the name of the other one. There's one off Olive Street and one off at 1800 Montagnais. All on city sewer, none on septic. If you have any questions for me, I'm happy to address them.
I appreciate that, but we're way over time
No
on what I
doubt.
told you
Yes,
guys
sir.
to get. We've been very diligent with that. Are there any more public comments? Are there any public comments in support of the project? We need to try to alternate back and forth. Any other public comments opposed to the project? All right, good. We'll take it up as a court. You guys will notice in your packets you have two ordinances drafted. One would uphold and approve the planning board and approve the CUP, and the other one would deny this CUP. And so with that, I'm going to hand it to the justices for debate, and is your pleasure about what ordinance you would like to advance. I'll remind people that tonight, without a suspension of the rules, this would be on its first reading, and so it will be on its second reading next month. Justice Lyons?
Thank you, Judge. I think obviously the biggest concern is of the drinking water. What happens if something happens with the septic tank, which goes under the detriment to health and safety, in my opinion. So I would like to make a motion that we suspend the rules and move the ordinance to deny the appeal and CUP to a second reading. Did I do that right?
Based on Justice Lyons' comments, he would like to move forward with item number 14.2, which will deny the conditional use permit. Counsel, will you read that by title only?
An ordinance denying a conditional use permit recommended for denial by the Zoning Board of Adjustments.
You would just... I have a motion to suspend the rules and move to the second reading by Justice Lyons. Do I have a second? Second by Justice Dean. All those in favor? Those opposed? That motion fails. And with that, this will be on the second reading next month. Item number 15. Counsel, will you read that by title only?
An ordinance ratifying a conditional use permit recommended for approval by the Planning and Zoning Board for the Myers Boys Garage.
Director Addo, which district is this in?
It's Mr. Coleman Taylor, District Number 1.
Okay. Would you like to just give us a quick rundown on this?
Absolutely, got it.
Quick rundown.
Got it. So the planning board unanimously approved the Mayor's Boy Garage CUP 729 on August 24, 2003. It's a one-man shop. It's already an existing existing garage. So he's gonna just make sure that it's 40 by 50 shop building. He's making sure that cars comes in, stays there until it's done and leaves. We had hours of operation from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. No comments received from the neighbors, no technical or engineering concerns, and the CUP met all the technical reviewers' conditions. And we have some planning condition, which is basically stick to the conditions that we ask him to do, and all the applications he approved, he submitted, and any additional changes needs to go through the planning board again. So,
Thank you for that, sir. With that, this will be on the first reading. Justice Secchi?
This isn't my ordinance. Would it be best to keep it on first reading, or we can suspend the rules and advance it to the second reading?
That's completely up to the pleasure of the board at this point, of the court.
I feel because we had an unanimous planning board decision, there was no oppositions to this.
No
correct?
opposition, like no technical concerns, nothing.
Then I'd
So-
like to make a motion to suspend the rules and advances to the second reading.
I have a motion to suspend the rules and move it to the second reading by Justice Ecke, a second by Justice Lyons. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? That'll fail. This will be on the second reading for next month.
Can we have a show of hands? It sounded like the ayes had it, if I may, Judge.
10-1. Yeah, we can have a, will you call a quick roll, Ms. Mason, on this for us, please? This is on a motion to suspend the rules and move it to the second reading.
Robert Dennis. Suki Hires. Evelyn Rios Stafford. Willie Lemming. Oh, Gary Ricker.
Yes, ma'am.
Butch Pond. David Wilson. Kyle Lyons. Lisa Ecke. Charles Dean. Chandra Washington. Beth Koger.
Motion passes. Counsel, will you read this ordinance for a second time?
An ordinance ratifying a conditional use permit recommended for approval by the Planning and Zoning Board for Myers Boys Garage.
Justice Ecke?
Thank you, Judge. I'd like to suspend the rules, make a motion to suspend the rules and advances to the third and final reading.
Second.
I have a motion to suspend the rules and move to a third and final reading by Justice Ecke, a second by Justice Lyons. All those in favor? Those opposed? Fails. Who voted against? Can you show your hands if you voted against? Motion fails. That'll move to the third reading next month. Justice Dennis, did you have a comment? Quickly?
I don't know if I can do anything quickly or not, but I'll try. I just want to go look at it and be sure. That's all. I'm not against it. I just want to go see it myself and say, okay, I saw it, I'm for it.
Do you need me to email you the address? Got it.
Justice Koger, do you have something procedurally here?
Well, I'm just going to say, I'm not against it. I just don't think we should be moving stuff like this forward on
Okay,
one night.
well, the debate is not open on this. Well, that'll move to
Well,
the third
that
and
was-
final reading next month. I think with that, we've expired our agenda. I want to thank everybody for their good work tonight. The reports are in your packet. We'll be adjourned.